Take two.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Green Bean Podcast with Adrian Green and
Maddie Cupcakes.
our guest for today,
Mark Richardson.
the voice of Howard County.
Okay. I don't know about that, but I do enjoy it. So.
Yeah. So, what are some things you like to do in your pastime? When you have pastime, geez.
Man, when I do, obviously I think everybody that knows me knows my passion for animals. I mean, we had to move dogs around here in the house, but I love going out and spending time with my horses, even if it's not riding. Just going out and being with them and feeding them, making sure they're okay, checking on them. That's just a real passion of mine. I guess if you had to identify my biggest passions, hunting and fishing. As you know, Adrian, I love to do both, and mainly because it puts me with my closest friends doing something that we enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
I used to, and I still do periodically, I used to fish competitively a lot, all over the state of Texas, fishing tournaments, just tons of them. And in here, just a year ago or so, one of my very best buddies called me and he said, "Hey, we've been invited to fish in this invitational, and I want you to be my partner." And so we went out there and fished a big tournament and wound up winning it, because sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And so I love fishing. A couple weeks ago, I got the chance to go with my son, go deer hunting. We had a highly successful hunt and just finished packing the freezer earlier today, as a matter of fact, with that meat. So anything outdoors really is my favorite thing to do. And if it involves animals of any kind, I think those are my pastimes. And then watching sports, not so much on TV, but watching them live. I'm not much for sitting down and watching sports on TV, but if I get an opportunity to go out and watch anything, whether it's little league to high school to college, pros, whatever, I love to do that.
So I have to be honest, I've never really paid attention to like announcers, sports-wise. But, I mean, you gotta be the most entertaining one that I've ever got a chance to even just randomly come across.
Viral content is what he is.
Viral content. So nobody gets so pumped up as you do. So, I mean, there are times that you've been in the same, broadcasting booth area or whatever to broadcast like state championship games and stuff like that. And I imagine other people or their stations are just, they're close to the mic and they're, giving the play-by-play and, just trying to be polite of everybody around them. And meanwhile, here comes Mark Richardson. And that's another one for the Coahoma Bulldogs.
Well, it starts with I've had no formal training in broadcasting sports, so I don't know what the rules are.
Oh.
I have very often said I have to be a travesty to sports broadcasting because I am much different than anybody I know. Now, anybody that calls with me for a while eventually starts to become like me, but there's been some unique situations. I was calling, I think the first time this happened, I was calling my second Borden County State Championship, and I'm never afraid to ask anything, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, we've carried the Dallas Cowboys for a long time, and this game's at AT&T Stadium. I'm going to call my contact at the Cowboys and say, we want the Cowboys press box. He laughed. He said, nobody gets the Cowboys press box. He said, but nobody's ever had the nerve to ask, so how about the visiting press box? So we get the sweetest press box in all of AT&T Stadium, and Borden County is dominating. They're winning. And I look over, and there's the 6man.com's football broadcast team or whatever, and I look over, and they're recording me. They're videoing me broadcasting this game because, oh my goodness, when my team scores a touchdown, and it's I won't do it now because I'll blow your equipment up right here.
Let's not.
But they're actually recording me, and afterwards we had multiple radio stations come over and say we've never seen anything like that. That was as much fun to watch you as it was to watch the game. And I thought, okay, well, that's what it ought to be.
I just remember the clip of when the Bulldogs won the state championship.
Well, okay, so that's a really...
That's the highest pitch I've ever heard your voice.
First of all, give my part of the credit, half the credit to my wife who was there with me. Daphne was in the booth, and I loved her reaction because it was, yay! With the flat hand clap. And it was so, her reaction is as fun to watch as mine. But Just yesterday, we went to San Angelo to call Big Spring Steers basketball. We went to a restaurant to eat there, and there's a guy that's worked there forever, and he's from Coahoma.
Mm-hmm.
He came over and started talking to me about that softball broadcast and how much fun it was, how many times he's watched it, and
That's cool.
and this and that. And it's going to sound egotistical, but I have a big ego. It is really cool when I go someplace and Daphne and I get this all the time. Are you the softball guy? Or are you the football guy? And I'm like, yeah, well, I'm sorry if I, offended you, but I don't know what the rules are, and I don't plan on changing, what the rules are. I'll continue to call the way I always have. And what that's fueled by is a 100% passion for those kids that are out there on the field, on the court,
Right.
whatever it is. I get to know every one of these kids personally, their parents. I get information about them, so when I'm talking, I can talk about what their favorite pizza topping is, what their nicknames are, and things like that. And I think if you're going to broadcast sports, if you cannot get in and get to know who you're calling for that way, your broadcast will never be as good as it can be.
I went to church with the.
I'm happy for you. It was good. Was that one time? Or?
No.
Humble brag.
Well, he was the voice of the lead band for a while.
Okay.
And he did all of our announcements all the way through UIL and all that stuff. And I can't for the life of me remember his name right now, but he died a while back. But anyway, he knew everybody's name.
Yep.
From like junior high on up to seniors, and memorized them. It wasn't written on paper or anything. He knew each and every one of you. Like, he'd walk up to you at church, he'd walk up to you outside. I would see him like walk up to a kid at a 7-Eleven and be like, "Hey, you're Brandon. Hey, how's it going? You play da-da-da," and it's just remarkable what an announcer goes through and what the impact y'all guys have, like what kind of superhero you can be to these kids,
I don't think there's any superhero to it at all. What my job is to recognize their accomplishments, not the other way around. So I've never thought of myself as any kind of, to use your word, superhero or anything like that. I just feel like God has blessed me with an opportunity to be able to go out and recognize the accomplishments of young people. And I really don't think there's anything more important in the world that can ever be done than to lift up kids. And I don't care if it's a 7-year-old kid or a 17-year-old kid, or even at Howard College if it's a 20-year-old kid. You can't do anything more important with your life.
But Mark, another thing is like going through high school and everything is like a lot of those kids don't have parents at that game.
That's correct.
Right. So you are their parents in a way.
I really appreciate where you're going with Matt.
You know what I'm saying?
Here's what I take a lot of pride in. I love going to football games and looking at the kids that have come back. They're off at school,
Right.
They're off working or whatever, and looking down and seeing how many the backs of letter jackets have the nicknames on their letter jacket instead of their name that I gave them from the booth.
Okay.
That to me is beyond cool. And I never want for a halftime interview, because I have kids that have come back. I've been the voice of Coahoma Bulldogs now, going back well before I worked for KBST full time, when I was just doing it as a hobby. I've completed my 10th year as the quote, the voice of the Coahoma Bulldogs. And I still know so many of those kids. And look at my broadcast crew now for Coahoma. 2 of them are former players, that worked. And if I can, talk about my very proudest accomplishment as a broadcaster with kids that I've been involved with and called for, that was putting Garrett Parrish back on the football field. I cried that night as hard as just about as I've ever cried. I don't know if you were board opping that night, but when I announced that Garrett Parrish was coming out to be our sideline reporter, I tried to hide it at first, and then finally I just let my emotions show, and everybody heard me sobbing is probably the right word for it, because we took a young man whose whole life was his performance on the football field, and then he had that just ripped away from him. And so many people would have just given up, and he did not. And to put him on the field as our sideline reporter to this day is my proudest. State championships, I've called 6, I've won 5. But to this day, that's my proudest moment, is when Garrett Parrish rolled out onto that sideline, and we got to throw it to him on the microphone and say, Garrett Parrish, give us a sideline report. Now that was a couple years before I threw him down a flight of stairs, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That's
Now, real quick, I keep saying
That was not intentional, by the way. I just wanted to
Well,
mention
yeah,
that.
let's just talk about that real quick. So, I remember.
Gosh, dang. I brought it up too. That's horrible.
You did bring it up. So I remember you came back to the station and you were shaking up.
I was crying. I was shaking up, yep.
And you were like, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe it. I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to do that again. And I was like, what happened? And so you tell me that you lost your grip on his chair or
Okay,
something.
so we were calling a Howard College baseball game, and where we were set up was right next to the dugout between home plate and the first base dugout for the Hawks. Well, Garrett couldn't see any of right field most of the way to left field, or center field, excuse me, and he didn't like that. He said, let's go up in the bleachers. Well, I kind of looked at him, and he said, yeah, no, let's go up there. I'll be able to see better. I said, Garrett, it was like I had to remind him, you're in a wheelchair. And he said, yeah, it's no problem. You just lean me back at the right angle, pull me up. And I was like, Garrett, I'm not doing that. And he called me some names. He challenged my, my bro code, my man card, all that. And so
pulled your card.
I did. And so I did. I took him. It's about 5 steps up, and it was not a big deal. It was pretty easy. We got up there. We set up. We could see the whole game. Now the funny thing is, there's 2 older guys sitting up in the top row of these bleachers, and they look like the 2 old guys from the Muppet Show. They're set up in the balcony, and one of them looked down at me as we get ready to go to the stairs. One of them's just shaking his head. The other one looks at me and goes, "You need some help?" And I was like, "No, sir. We got this." So we get them up, and I'm so proud of myself. We get them up, we call the game, it's a doubleheader, we win them both, everything's great. And so I assume getting down has got to be easier than getting up, right? And so Garrett kind of coaches me, same guy, you need some help, son. Now he adds the son to it, and I was like, I got this. Well, what I didn't realize is you can't let your weight get too far out over, Garrett. So we made it to the first step, my weight got ahead of me, and next thing you know, Garrett is going down the steps sideways, bouncing down each step. I had the dramatics right there.
Oh,
and now he's, okay, listen, I'm going to just give you all of it. Now he is laying on his side, the wheelchair's on its side, and to make matters worse, that top wheel is spinning. Right, I know, you're laughing. That wheel is just spinning, and I'm like, oh my gosh, now I have to get up because I've lost my balance. And I realize I'm about to add insult to injury because I'm about to fall on him. I never played football growing up, but that day I did the perfect football roll. I dove, got to the other side of him, tucked my head, landed on my shoulder, and rolled over. Now it hurt, but that wasn't the important thing. That's when I get up and see the wheel spinning. The other point about that is Howard College baseball team is outside of the dugout going through their post-game talk with the coach. Every one of those players sees what happened. Now they are climbing fences, climbing the dugout, running around. They're all running. Garrett's laying on his side. That wheel's still spinning. I'm trying to figure out how to pick him back up. The baseball team's picking him up for me. And all I do remember is I remember looking up at the top of those bleachers, and those 2 old men, the guys from the Muppet Show, are both shaking their heads. You know, and I know you can't see that on a podcast, but
should have taken that help, son.
So, yeah, I know. So we all get him back up, and, Garrett's a little shaken up. I mean, he's just been, not pushed, but dropped down a flight of stairs. And then I look up, and there's Garrett's mom, Candy Parrish. God bless Candy Parrish. And I thought, oh my God, she just saw me do this. And I'm apologizing. I'm crying uncontrollably. Tears are down my face. I'm apologizing. Garrett, he's hit his head. Candy's coming up. And finally, we're taking him out to the van. All the baseball teams left thinking I'm the worst guy in the history of the world. Those old men are still lingering around just to give me dirty looks. And finally, I'm so out of control. Candy grabs me by both arms and she shakes me, all right? Like child abuse kind of shake. And she looks me right in the eyes and she goes, "Mark, stop it. He was already broke." that's supposed to make me feel better. It does now, but it didn't at the time. So, of course, I live in the same community as Candy. I see her and her husband all the time. I keep in contact with Garrett constantly. And there's never a conversation that goes by where Candy doesn't say something like, oh, yeah, remember the time you threw my son down a flight of stairs, or whatever. So it still bothers me, but...
They get Christmas cards every year.
So he comes back from that and he's shaking up and he's sitting in his office and he's telling me the story and I'm laughing just as hard as I am.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're a monster. I'm like, you're the one who threw him down the stairs. And he's just like, he has this look in his eyes. He's just looking up. He's like, I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to do that again. I'm never going to let that happen. I go, Mark, stop. I go, you're starting to sound like a sexual assault victim. You're just blaming yourself now.
Well, and there were a couple of people in the office that I don't think understood how much it affected me and how much it upset me. And so there were jokes around the office, and I think it was the next staff meeting that somebody chose to mention it and kind of harass me about it in front of the staff. That is probably the maddest I've ever gotten in a staff meeting. And obviously I'm not going to name names or anything like that, and nobody did it on purpose. Nobody intended to upset me. They all saw what Candy saw and what Garrett eventually saw once, he got over his concussion and all that. But, it took a long time for that to get to where I can joke about it. I'm sorry, Garrett. I love you, man.
Don't worry, Garrett. We will get your side of the story. Don't you worry.
Oh, he's going to tell you exactly the same thing. I didn't hide any details.
Oh, man.
So, another thing we ask people here is about the struggle.
Okay.
Okay. I am sure in your career, with Boy Scouts, I know with anything, there has to be a down spot. And stuff that you've had to really work through. And do you have a time that, life was kind of a wreck? And...
Oh, man, I've got a couple. Can I go back to my daddy again?
Yeah, you sure can, buddy.
One of the things my dad taught me and told me over and over, and again, I to this day, I think I had the world's most perfect dad. One of the things he taught me that Adrian has heard me say is never let anybody outwork you.
Oh yeah.
That is sage advice right there. You follow that and really most likely you're going to succeed. But I'll tell you a couple instances I had. I've had some great jobs. 16 years I think with the Boy Scouts. I've run the biggest summer camp programs in the state of Texas. When I moved here, I was running the 5th largest summer camp program in the country. And so I've had some great experiences, but one of the great experiences I had was working at Baylor University, raising money. I don't know, I say I bleed green and gold, but I bleed red and white, I bleed black and gold, Anyhow, working at Baylor University and in fundraising was fantastic, especially when I began to get to focus on raising money for athletics. And I had just been recognized. I got to go all over the country presenting at these conferences. I had just been recognized in what's the fundraising magazine for universities as having the best annual program in the country. Now, not the most money raised every year, but best percentage of yeses, best percentage of credit card gifts, a lot of things that get measured and tangible. So I went in for my annual review. And I literally walked in there thinking, I wonder if they're going to rename this university after me. I was that confident walking in. I had all my stacks of, articles that I had published and the certificate of naming me as a top presenter at a conference, I think in Toronto, and all this. And so I was really arrogant and very overconfident. And I walked in, and I'd just been given a new supervisor that I did not like. I'll just be honest with you. I couldn't stand her. I didn't agree with her. She didn't have any fundraising experience, and I didn't think she understood me. I definitely didn't understand her. And there was an HR person in there with her too. And I thought, oh, okay, this is the person that chooses to make this Baylor/Mark University. What they were telling me was, we're eliminating your position.
Oh.
Effective immediately. Basically, I was fired. But what they did is they decided they were going to outsource the whole program and eliminate the position. So it's the same thing as being fired. Mm-hmm. So there I was on the top of my game, feeling great about everything. Just 2 weeks before, I had RG3 in my office interviewing him, Heisman Trophy winner, goes on to play for the Washington Redskins. They're still the Redskins, by the way. you know, and all these great opportunities I had, and now I have to call my wife and say, I'm going to need you to come pick me up. I don't have a job, and I don't think I can drive home. And that put me into a funk like you would just never believe. I mean, I was in a deep, dark place. I was depressed. I really had never really had to go out of my way to look for a job. They had just always kind of fallen in my lap. Even the Baylor job, the funny thing about that was I was kind of looking for a job. I wasn't happy. The guy I was working for felt like he was doing some unethical stuff. And anyhow, there was this job description, and my wife had written my name all over it. And she said, "You need to put in for this job." I said, "Why is that?" And she said, "It's got your name all over it." It literally did. So anyhow, now I don't have a job, and now I'm spending all day looking for jobs, applying for jobs online, and you know, I'm looking at unemployment and things like that. So one day on top of the world, next day feeling like I'm worthless. How am I going to support my family? Am I really going to have to file for unemployment? Which I did, you know, and
Wow.
fortunately through some of the fundraising I had done at Baylor, there was a guy there that I had worked with his family and his grandparents with some major gifts. And he said, "Hey man, we're about to expand. We got this mom and pop t-shirt printing company. We're about to blow up. Do you want to be part of that?" And that became a whole nother story that Adrian's heard a million times over. So I got out of that, and I did okay. But fast forward about 4 years, and we partnered up with another company, and the owners went on vacation one day. And while they were gone, this guy called me into his office, and I'd been training a guy that was supposed to take over a print company in Austin. That's not true. I was training a guy that was going to be my replacement. So he called me in, he looked at me, and he said, "You're being terminated without cause." So what does that mean? He said, "Well, you don't have a job, but because we're saying without cause, you can file for unemployment." I thought, "What?"
Why?
And here's your 2-week severance. So thank you very much. You know, and so there I was again, back at it now. You know, fast forward, and I got the job here with the Boy Scouts, and it was the dream job. I run a Buffalo Trail Scout Ranch, became the chief operating officer, working with the greatest boss I've ever had, and my closest friend. So, yeah, I've been in bad spots. I've had some struggles. You know, every day. I mean, things come up. Talk about some struggles. Remember what we were like for a couple weeks after the Andrews bus wreck.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a different kind of struggle. I obviously was secure in my job, and I had a good job and all that. But Adrian and I went out and covered her story, and she gets way more credit than I do. But we saw bodies that day, you know, and we saw them being put on stretchers and covered and put in ambulances, and there's been some other things, you know, that have come up like that, that just, you know, there's struggles to life, and it's cliche, but it's not how you handle getting knocked down, it's how you get up that determines who you are and where you get to. It's being able to get back up, and it's not always easy.
I've told a lot of people that.
Yeah, after you knocked them out.
Yeah, I knocked them out. No, I'm too nice to do that.
That sounds like a good place for us to take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk more with our guest, Mark Richardson. You're listening to the Green Bean Podcast.